Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive and consequential stories of our time, the relentless, high-stakes race to artificial intelligence supremacy.
What you're about to see is a timeline of breakthroughs, but it's really a dramatic story of how a handful of labs and a whole lot of money transformed a scientific field into, well, the next platform for pretty much everything.
So our story really kicks off around 2019 with a simple yet pretty revolutionary idea. Researchers figured out that if you just made AI models bigger, and by bigger, I mean feeding them way more data and using way more computing power, they didn't just get a little bit better. Nope. They started developing entirely new, almost magical abilities. The years 2019 and 2020 were all about putting this scaling hypothesis to the test. You had OpenAI showing the world the sheer power of scale with language, while DeepMind proved this same idea could be used to solve one of the biggest challenges in biology. The spark had definitely been lit. And it really started right here. OpenAI's GPT-2 was so good at generating text that the lab famously held back its full release, because they were genuinely worried about how it could be misused. Then, in 2020, came GPT-3, a model so massive and so capable that it basically fired the starting gun for the entire AI industry we see today, creating a whole economy around its API.
Meanwhile, while OpenAI was focused on language, Google's DeepMind was busy showing that this whole scaling thing had way broader applications. First, they built AlphaStar to master the insanely complex strategy game StarCraft 2. But then, with AlphaFold 2, they solved the 50-year-old grand challenge of protein folding. I mean, this completely revolutionized medicine and biology, like, overnight.
Okay, so with the power of these giant models proven, the race entered a totally new phase. After a bit of a quiet period, the technology just escaped the lab in 2022 and went directly into the hands of the public. And it started with something incredible, our ability to create images just from words. Now, the key technology behind this was something called a diffusion model. The best way to think about it is like a sculptor who starts with a block of marble, which is just pure noise, right? And slowly chips away until a masterpiece emerges. These models learn to do that in reverse, starting with digital static and refining it, step by step, into a coherent image based on your text. And in 2022, that tech led to a creative explosion. OpenAI released the just stunningly capable DALL-E 2. A new company, Midjourney, completely captured the imagination of artists. And, this is crucial, Stability AI released Stable Diffusion as open source. That meant anyone with a decent computer can now run their own powerful image generator. The floodgates were wide open.
Image generation was amazing, for sure, but it turned out to be just the warm-up act. In late 2022, one single release would change the public's perception of AI forever.
It was ChatGPT. And look, while the underlying tech wasn't brand new, the interface was an absolute revolution. By putting a simple, easy-to-use chat window on top of a powerful language model, OpenAI made AI accessible to hundreds of millions of people almost overnight. The world woke up.
In that awakening, it triggered an immediate, frantic response. ChatGPT's viral success meant that every other major tech company had to have an answer, and that kicked off a full-blown public arms race for AI supremacy. The period from 2023 to 2024 was just a blur of releases. OpenAI dropped the massively powerful multimodal GPT-4. Google scrambled to respond with BERT, which eventually became its Gemini model family. A new, safety-focused lab called Anthropic jumped in with Claude, designed to be more helpful and harmless. And Meta? They took a completely different path, releasing their powerful Llama models as open source, creating a powerful alternative to the big guys. So this created two totally distinct fronts in the AI war. On one side, you had the closed model titans, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, in a head-to-head race for raw capability. But on the other, you had this open-source rebellion, led by Meta and a French startup called Mistral, trying to democratize access to powerful AI and challenge the dominance of the closed labs. One of the key battlegrounds became the AI's context window, which is basically its short-term memory. So while OpenAI's GPT-4 and Anthropic's Cloud 3 could process, the length of a book, Google's Gemini 1.5 Pro came out with a staggering 1 million token window. That's enough to process an entire library of information in a single go. But the race quickly expanded way beyond text. In 2024, OpenAI stunned the world with Sora, a model that could generate jaw-droppingly realistic video from just a simple text prompt. They followed that up with GPT-4o, which had this real-time, super emotive conversational voice.
And at the same time, companies like Suno and Stability AI were making huge leaps in generating high-quality music.
And this brings us right up to the present, and to the next major paradigm shift. You see, the models are no longer just content generators. They are starting to become autonomous agents, AIs that can understand a goal and actually take actions to achieve it.
The evolution is pretty clear when you look at it. First, AI learned to generate things. Then, it learned to use tools, like browsing the web or running code. And now, we're right on the cusp of step 3. AI that can take a complex goal, like, say, plan my trip to Tokyo, break it down into smaller tasks, and actually execute them on its own.
And we're already seeing the first generation of these agents pop up. OpenAI is testing something called Operator, which can control a web browser to complete tasks for you. Both OpenAI and Google have released autonomous agents that can basically act as software engineers. And DeepMind's Alpha Evolve, it can even invent new, more efficient algorithms completely from scratch.
But this whole agentic shift isn't just happening on your screen, because what's the ultimate tool for an AI to use? A physical body.
We're seeing this profound convergence of AI and robotics. The very same powerful foundation models that power chatbots are now being used to give humanoid robots, like the Figure 03, the ability to understand and interact with the physical world around them. The AI mind is starting to inhabit the machine.
Look, the pace of progress we've just covered is absolutely dizzying. What used to take years now seems to happen in a matter of months, which forces us to ask, what could possibly be next?
You know, when you look at the entire timeline all at once, the trend is just undeniable. It is an exponential curve. From that initial spark of GPT-2 back in 2019, through the explosion of ChatGPT and the model wars, all the way to the agentic shift of today, the density of breakthroughs is just increasing at a breathtaking rate.
Think about it. We've gone from coherent sentences to solving biology's grand challenges, to generating images, video, and code, to building autonomous agents that can act both in the digital and physical worlds, all in just a few short years. The race is so far from over, and the biggest question of all remains, what's the next paradigm shift, and which lab is going to get there first?